There we go. No need to keep your video on if you do not want to. Um, and we will be going through a bit of housekeeping as well. Um, but welcome. My name is Melanie Nugent Noble. I'm the executive director with Nocturne Halifax. My pronouns are she and her. And I am looking forward to sharing with you about 2025 Nocturne Artist Info Session and how to complete a call for submissions for our beacon call for projects, as well as for our low sensory call for projects. I am joined by a few different members of the Nocturne team today. Signe Home, namely our programming coordinator, and Brigitte Zhao, who will also be helping today. And there's a few other folks from our team who will be in as well. Yeah, and we're all happy to share more about the festival with you. So with that, I'm going to dive right in. And don't worry, I will be getting into some housekeeping as well. But feel free to put any questions in the chat and we will address those. So I'd like to first start by saying our land acknowledgement and geographically, Nocturne takes place within Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We also acknowledge the significant foundations that the infrastructure and culture of Black and African Nova Scotian communities have played in building this province and country. We continue to work to collaborate, amplify, and connect with the many art communities that live and work here in Mi'kma'ki. I would also encourage anyone if they would like to acknowledge where they are joining us from today. I know many people are joining from outside of Mi'kma'ki. I myself am currently in Silk Okanagan territory, which is in British Columbia in the Okanagan. So hello.
Yeah, I just dropped her off and she spoke. No, it's just her.
So for today's agenda, we will be going a few. We have this is kind of a short agenda of the different chapters that we'll be going through. We'll be providing information about access support for this info session. We'll also be sharing information about Nocturne, about our curator and theme. We'll be sharing about the low sensory project. We will walk you through our application, and then there will be time for questions at the end. We expect the whole thing to take about an hour, and we're going to try and stick to that as much as possible. So we have closed captioning on for this, but we also encourage you, if you do want to use closed captioning, that you can do so. If you have any questions around how to turn it on, please put the question in the chat and one of our team will help direct you with how to do that. You can also do it by clicking in your profile picture and then clicking on the settings and then clicking the accessibility tab. Under closed captioning, you can click the checkbox that enables always show captions. When captions are enabled by the host or the meeting webinar, captions will be automatically displayed for you. We're happy to answer any questions related to the presentation, either in the chat or during the presentation or during the Q&A period at the end of the presentation. Signe Home, our programming coordinator, will be keeping an eye on the chat, as well as on our info@Nocturne mailbox if there's any questions that come in that way as well. As well, we are recording the session, And we will be posting it on our website and then as well sharing it to everyone who attended as well. We'll also be sharing a copy of the presentation as well as PDF versions of the um, call for submissions as well for people to check out. So, yes, meet the team. Myself, Melanie Nugent Noble, I've been with the team since August of 2022. So this is my fourth festival. My very first festival was actually as an artist myself, and that was in 2021. I came from BC and showed a project, fell in love with Halifax, um, and then kind of the rest is history. So very excited to be in a leadership role with Nocturne and seeing it into this next year, this festival season. Um, our festival curator this year is Marita Kus. Unfortunately, Marita is unable to join us today. She is on a research trip right now in Mexico, but she did leave a little message, a video message, which we'll be playing for her as well. And we also have Signy Home, our programming coordinator, who will be you'll be seeing in the chat. Um, we also have a few board members who I know are joining as well. If you want to put up little hearts or waves or anything to identify yourselves, please do so. So, what is Nocturne? Nocturne Art at Night is a fall festival that brings together art and energy to the streets of Chibuktuk, Halifax, each October. This completely free annual event showcases and celebrates the visual art scene in Mi'kma'ki, Nova Scotia. This year, Nocturne Ground will take place from October 16th to 19th and is curated by Marita Kus. At its core, Nocturne exhibits temporary artworks in downtown Halifax and Dartmouth. We aim to present critical and relevant art events of a high artistic and professional standard. We encourage proposals of all different types. Um, and we really look at Nocturne's theme and alignment with our different values. Um, so Nocturne's vision. Nocturne is the premier art experience in a thriving community. Our mission, Nocturne Art at Night, celebrates contemporary professional art in Chibuktuk, Halifax. Through our festival and additional programming, we use art as a catalyst for connection. And our values, we use an artist-centered approach. So in everything we do, we strive to provide a strong foundation of artist care and outreach centering the artists in our processes and decision making. Equity, diversity, and inclusion. We know that the arts helps to build community capacity for reconciliation, conversation, interaction, and a sense of vibrancy and belonging to one's community. Nocturne prioritizes the presentation of work created by Black and Indigenous artists, newcomer artists, to SLGBTQIA plus artists, and artists living with disabilities and across language boundaries. We also value empowerment through the arts. So Nocturne aims to provide a space and time to consider the issues facing us today. Nocturne's programming considers the local, global, and artistic context in which it exists. We continue to provide opportunities for artists to create something that they don't have to sell or sell and to explore new works with the financial resources and logistical support to ensure success. We recognize that there's a gap in the sector that demands artists to self-promote and advocate to self-market and constantly generate new works for sale and making a profit while doing it. We address this by taking the pressure off monetizing experimental artwork and new collaboration, allow artists to really be reflective of the full spectrum of their artistic dreams and visions and goals. Um, so we have a few different um, categories through which we program. The ones that we'll be focused on today are the ones you see here highlighted in yellow, the Beacon projects and the low sensory project, but I'll briefly touch on all of them. So our anchor projects are selected by our curator. They are generally funded through partnership with the Halifax Regional Municipality, and they really work to anchor the theme of the festival. And there's usually between 4 or 5, and they're located in the different zones. We also have spotlight projects. These are non-juried projects. They are selected by Nocturne organizers or really developed in a longer term with Nocturne organizers to enhance the experience of the festival. And they're usually funded through Nocturne as well as a partnership. So for instance, we have projects that we might be working on currently that are taking place in 2026 or 2027. So they're sometimes things that will take a bit longer. So Beacon projects, which most of you, I assume, are here for today, are projects that will take place on the Saturday night from 6 to midnight. They are artist-led artworks. They are submitted to our annual call, selected through a jury. They are funded by Nocturne, and artists receive a Carfax artist fee to cover expenses associated with the project. They're also usually site specific. All right. Low sensory projects are sensory friendly. They were just introduced last year with the support of Canada Council for the Arts. They operate very similarly, but they take place on the Sunday. We only select one project, and it is site specific to Point Pleasant Park. Signy, I might get you to talk a little bit about community groups and galleries for a second.
Okay. So, hi everybody. So community groups and galleries, these are projects that different organizations, arts organizations, local businesses, galleries, museums will self-fund and submit kind of an idea to us. Those also take place on Saturday night. And just to be clear, because I know it's a little confusing with all these projects, Saturday night is the main showcase. So the only project here that usually doesn't take place on the Saturday is the low sensory project. So if you have any other questions about that, just let us know. So the community groups and galleries don't go through necessarily the same jury process as Beacon projects, but they're vetted by our programming team. Melanie, do you want me to keep going, or do you want to take over?
I'm good.
Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll show a quick video, which is our highlight reel from our 2024 festival. So, see you on the other side.
And there's Ferry Away, so it's on the ferry just down there.
Now I'd like to just introduce and talk a little bit about Marita Kus, who's our curator for this year. Marita is an artist and curator based between Chibuktuk and Tallinn, Estonia. Their practice often involves collaboration, prioritizing tactile and participatory experiences to foster meaningful connections between audiences and art through creating sensory interactive works that engage public spaces and explore material relationships. So you might know of Marina's past participation in Nocturne, where she presented Meander Drift, a sensory installation co-created with artist and choreographer Lauren Runians. It was located in Grand Parade. Meander also appeared in Eastern Front Theater and Radiant Rural Halls on Prince Edward Island in 2024. In 2022, Marita co-founded Gallery Cecil, a pop-up gallery responding to Chibuktuk's need for immediate art spaces. She also co-directed the inaugural Halifax Art Book Fair in 2024, bringing the first event of its kind to the Maritimes. That same year, she curated the 14th Aniga Night Festival in Antigonish, themed Senses, Fire, Water, Earth, and Air. Marita is currently pursuing a master's at the Estonian Academy of Art in Craft Studies. Her research delves into individual and active relationships with materials through collaborative interventions. And I believe next is a video, and I think it'll start playing right away. Oh, no, sorry, about the theme, ground. So Nocturne's 2025 festival curator, Marita Kus, selected the theme of ground for this year's theme. Artists are invited to explore the physical, social, and cultural and political aspects of the ground beneath us. Gardeners, mycologists, walkers, archaeologists, and geologists, roadworkers, settlers. We all have different relationships with the space and which we interact with daily, and we encourage applicants to consider the multitude of possible meanings of this theme.
Hi everyone, I'm Marita. I'm the curator for this year's Nocturne. I'm sorry I can't attend the info session. I'm currently on a research trip in the Oaxaca region of Mexico as part of my master's studies. The theme I've chosen for this year is ground, which I encourage you to explore as both a verb and a noun. I'm personally really interested in the social, cultural, and political aspects of what is in, on, and under the ground that we live with. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out to me at my email, marita@nocturnehalifax.ca. I really look forward to all your submissions.
Great. I know most of the submissions we do get are for our Beacon project. I'm just going to share a little bit about how the low sensory project is a bit different. Our low sensory daytime project takes place on Sunday, October 19th during daytime hours. We have a site-specific location picked out for this project already. It will be in Point Pleasant Park within one of the two park's summer house gazebos. Nocturne acknowledges that the majority of our festival programming is often not very sensory friendly. So for instance, there's often bright lights, loud noises, and large crowds. So the low sensory call was really designed to provide a sensory friendly programming as part of the festival for all to enjoy. Nocturne encourages applicants to consider the multitude of sensory differences and sensitivities that individuals may experience, such as sound, brightness, flashing lights, crowded spaces, so on and so forth. Proposals should consider a variety of sensory-friendly options for their proposal. There is a separate application form for this call. The application is process is similar with some slight differences. So we consider some different low sensory elements. So we do have the scoring matrix looks a bit different. So we will share that a bit later, comparing it to the beacon call. It is also site specific, so you have to design or submit a project specifically for the location. And then the call process is a bit different. So it is a two-step process. So we will select up to 3 artists or collectives who will have the opportunity to present their ideas to the jury. And then from those presentations, the jury will select the final project that will be part of the festival. If you are selected as shortlisted, you do get a fee as well to develop your presentation. And that is $500. Um, you can apply to both calls. So I know that's a question that people will often have. All right, so how to apply? So first thing to do would be to read our application guidelines and go through them. So if you have not yet already, I assume many folks have done, go to nocturnehalifax.ca. We do have links on our homepage, but anything related to this year's festival will also be shared at on the top bar at Nocturne 2025 ground. You'll see both the main call and the low sensory call in there. Click on the call you're applying to, and you'll be brought to a long blog post itemizing all of the guidelines and helpful information. It's best to start there and read all the full guidelines and the FAQs. You can also download it as a PDF, which includes information and the submission form questions. When you're ready to apply and you feel you have all your questions and answered drafts, you have your budget ready, and your support material ready, you can go to the Apply Now button and you will go to a Google form where you will be asked to input all of your information before submitting. So this is what you will see. Like I said, you can download the PDF and preview it before filling out the form. If you do need any support with any part of your application, we can provide assistance. We can also accept proposals in other ways. So via phone, video, or audio files as needed by the applicant. You may also submit your application form or in English or French. If you do choose a different format, you will still be asked the same questions and need to provide support material, for instance, and a budget. About the artist, we want to hear all about you. So the first 2 sections are really about you and your collaborators. It includes contact details, but it also gives a jury a look at who you are as an artist or collective, some tips. We really want to get to know you. Give as much information as you can. Tell us about who you are as an artist or a collective. If you are a collective, have one person submit the application with everyone's details. This person will also be the main contact for the collective throughout the submission process, as well as if your project is successful. We ask that you also include bios and CVs for each artist if you have them. Project information. This section helps you to paint a picture of what you've planned for your project. The key sections here are to include your project description, your thematic connection to the theme of ground, but each section gives you the selection committee a better idea of what you might have planned for the festival. You don't need to have a venue selected in order to submit, but it doesn't hurt to have one in mind, or if you've already thought about one, or if there's one that's very specific to your project. Make sure that you're being as clear as possible. Please have someone else read your project description, ideally someone who doesn't necessarily know your work. The jury likely doesn't, it's not it's not 100% that the jury will know who you are or know about your work. You really want to make no assumptions. We really want you to review your technical description and your budget and make sure that everything is lined up together. For instance, budget with technical descriptions and needs, so on and so forth, and definitely connect it to the theme. So an example of a project from last year where they did have a specific venue in mind was Arjun Lal's To Be a Flamingo. The only place that that project would have worked was in the YMCA pool. And if you know that your project is dependent on a very specific location, we would ask that you have a letter or some kind of confirmation or have made contact with that venue beforehand. If you do have any questions about this, please reach out to us. We know it can be tricky to reach out to venues ahead of time, but if it's not specific, like, so for instance, if you have a project and you require a green space with a large tree and access to power, let us know. Like, those are the details that are important for us to know to help us find the right venue for you. We really just wanted to share this quote as well. This is from Shayla Bond and Anne Kobayashi, who were our successful low sensory artists last year. So I'll just read it. We crafted our proposal by challenging our concept with numerous what if questions, ensuring it was practical and achievable, not just a conceptual idea. We believe that submitting a proposal that's as technical as it is artistic is essential. It helps the judges see that your idea is truly feasible. We appreciate it as much like a business would. We approached it, as much like a business would when they apply for a grant or a loan, recognizing that these grants are an investment in ideas they want to see succeed just beyond their aesthetic value. Our goal was to minimize the work for the judges by preemptively addressing potential questions and providing clear solutions. While we can't be certain this approach was the correct one, being as specific and concrete as possible certainly felt like it couldn't hurt. At the end of our festival, we always ask for artists, our Nocturne artists, if they have any advice for future artists who are looking to participate. And this, we thought, was a really great piece of advice that we wanted to share. It's also listed in the FAQs, along with other advice that was provided by last year's artists and 2023 artists as well. And so we really thought that this hit a lot of the points where we see a lot of really great ideas from artists that come through. A lot of really great questions are researched, and we see so much creativity. And a lot of times what really helps is to see that it's feasible and that you will be able to bring your project to fruition. So support material is a big part of this. We do recognize that a lot of the projects that you're doing are new. We encourage you to experiment. So we don't necessarily need this to be something that you've done before to make it feasible, but we want to know that you've thought it through. Maybe you have an illustration or a sketch or a mock-up of it. Maybe you have a maquette or something that you've developed up in a smaller scale. maybe you've done it in a different location and it's going to be different by doing a similar activation or project here. What can you show us in terms of support material that'll give the jury a strong sense of what you're doing and help visualize your project? The other piece of support material that we're going to ask you for is your budget. And likewise, we want to see that your budget lines up with what you're doing, is as detailed as possible, and is realistic as well. I should say as well, with your support material, you won't be able to edit. You'll have to make a copy and then edit that, which you can submit. Everything that you put in your application, like I said, should make its way onto the budget in some way. Imagine you're to do this project in the coming days or weeks. What would you need to do to make it happen? If you have additional funding, or if you're applying for additional funding to make it happen, also let us know. Your total project expenses and total revenues must balance. And we recognize it's a lot of work to put in an application and to consider all these things. We want artists to be as successful as possible, and we find that having all the planning up front, rather than like, oh, you have a great idea, you're accepted, and then it's like, oh no, now I have to figure out how to actually do this. We want the budgets to be realistic. We don't want artists to be stressed or out of pocket because they maybe don't have a timeline that's realistic, or they don't have a budget that's realistic, and now they have to do this thing. So we really do ask for you to be thoughtful around your budget and the logistic considerations to support your creative vision for what you want to do. And if you're not successful, you have a really great package, an idea, and a plan to make it happen, or maybe put it towards another festival as well. Once you've done all your support material, the last few bits are optional. They include artist equity, but they're really to help us kind of learn about the artists who are applying. So, for instance, what are the career stages of artists, and equity seeking groups as well. I wanted to share the scoring criteria, and really they are very similar, but they do differ a bit between the low sensory and the beacon projects. And this is what the jury uses when evaluating projects. So 10 marks or 10 points, a 10% weight, I should say, to alignment to Nocturne's core values. So is the project independent and non-commercial? Project must be free to experience. Project is produced by artists, creative artist workers, and or makers. Does the project align with the goals and framework of the festival? So festival schedule and architecture. So for instance, a challenge that we often get is a really great project, but it doesn't run for 6 hours. It will for on a Saturday night. Maybe it's a 2-hour performance. You might not get full marks there. So we really want to see projects that are a good alignment with the festival schedule. Doesn't mean that, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt this section. We just have a couple budget related questions. Do you
Sure.
mind if
Yeah.
we ask that? I think they're just
Yeah.
common questions that would be helpful for us to go through. So the first question is, what does it mean to balance revenue with costs?
Right.
So what is the revenue? The revenue is the funds that you'll be asking for from Nocturne, as well as potentially other grants that you might have applied for, or other sources of funding that are going into the project budget.
Correct. So if, for instance, if your project is, if when you go through everything and you're like, okay, this project is going to cost me $3,500 to complete, including the artist fee, then that's either the amount that you're going to ask for Nocturne, or you're going to say, okay, that's the amount. Um, I have $500 of funding or in-kind support coming from another support place. So I'm going to ask for $3,000 from Nocturne. So we just want to make sure that if your project is going to be $3,500, that your expenses meet your budget. And you can have multiple sources of income. And you don't need to have multiple sources of income either. Most projects that we fund are solely sponsored or funded by Nocturne. More questions, Signy?
Yeah, one other question about the CARFAC fees. Are CARFAC fees calculated on a per artist basis or a per project basis? So I think this is asking like if there's multiple artists applying for one project versus one single artist, I think. I
That
know
is
that.
a really great question. So just a little back up a bit. We use the Carfax fee schedule. And actually this year, there in like late 2024, fall of 2024, there was a new public art fee schedule that was announced. And so that is what Nocturne is implementing. And the way it works generally is the artist fee is about 35% of the entire project fee. So we've set up that our um, budget will automatically calculate this artist fee for you. And so the entire, like if it's a collective, that fee would be shared by the group. We also recognize that this is a new way of funding projects, and that like we're still figuring out if it works, and not one fee doesn't always work for all projects. So our recommendation is if you're in there and you're like, okay, we're doing a lot of work and this fee seems a little weird for what we're trying to do, or seems a little low because we have so many members, I encourage you to check out what's in the other fee. Like if there's another Carfax fee schedule that works for you, like that's from more of the traditional schedule that we would have used perhaps in previous years, to reference that, or to send us a little note and ask us questions, and we might be able to give you a bit of guidance, because we're also trying to figure this out as we go along and ensure that people are getting paid the right fee. So if you do have any questions around the Carfax fees, do reach out to us, because yeah, we want to make sure that people are being compensated appropriately. And it's a new tool. So yeah, we're still learning with it as well. Are there any other budget questions at this time?
Those are the ones that were in the chat.
Okay.
If anyone else has budget related question, feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand, or you can also ask it at the end.
Awesome. I'll just skip ahead to where I was here. So you filled everything out. And now, yeah, so the jury is going to look at the scoring criteria. So I'll go through the Beacon one, and I'll just read the different pieces here. And I won't fully go through the low sensory one. I'll just say what the differences are. But yeah, so alignment to Nocturne's core values, artistic merit, the highest at 25%. Is the project resolved and grounded in artistic and social discourse? Is it exploratory, challenging, and critical in nature? We want to see impact, 20%. For instance, is there cultural, educational, social, visual, and or community impact? Experience planning to execute the project successfully. Is the project feasible? Does the artist have the experience to complete the project as described? Um, Budget. Is there evidence the artist can execute this project successfully within the pros budget? Are there any flags for instance, are there any budget items that are too high or too low? And relevance to community and place. What makes this work relevant at this time and in this place? Is the artist local? Does it address any local themes or context? Um, and does artist represent a traditionally um, underrepresented group? The Low Sensory Project uses many of the same criteria. There is an extra component there of impact and integration of low sensory accessibility, which is worth 20%. Is the project centrally focused on low sensory access? Does the project reflect low sensory elements in a holistic way? Does the project consider diverse audiences and or represent a traditionally excluded community? Okay, so the application timeline. So for Beacon projects, the project starts, so January 15th, the project call for submissions opened. January 28th, today is the info session. The call closes on April 7th. We are hoping to notify folks by early June. On August 1st, marketing materials are due. Nocturne takes place October 16th to 19th, and then December 31st is the deadline for final reports from artists. The Low Sensory project timeline, for the most part, is the same. However, we do have the shortlisted artists will be giving their presentations in mid-May. And Signe, you had a question.
Yeah, I just have a question from someone in the chat, just asking if we can discuss the impact scoring criteria in more detail. They
Yeah.
said give an example of what might be included in an application and how we would measure it through this.
Yeah. So, for instance, different ways of looking at impact. It could really be really based on the type of project. So, if it's a sculptural project, for instance, what is the visual impact that you're talking about? If you're talking about like if it's a community project where there's engagement, what does that impact look like? So it really would look different based on the project. I think, ways of measuring or talking about impact, like, so for instance, if you are doing something where there's a social engagement piece or the public are being asked to participate, what is the level of that participation? Are they going to be adding to the artwork? How much, what's the number of people that you expect that might be able to participate? So if it's a participatory project, but only 3 people can participate over the course of the night versus 500 people being able to participate during the night, or if it is only 3 people, is it how deep is that impact? Do you know what I mean? So also, if it's sculptural, is it something that is, yeah, what does the visual impact? What will be the impact be on the landscape or in relation to the space that it's occupying? Often impact relates to the theme as well in some way. I hope that helps. I'll try and think of some more examples as well as we go along. Yeah, and so just to pick up on the low sensory project, the timeline is pretty much the same, except for the presentations will be taking place mid-May, and we will try and give shortlisted applicants about a month to prepare. Once you have everything ready, uh, have everyone read it over at the end and click submit. If along your application process, if you have any questions, you can reach us out to us at info@nocturnehalifax.ca, or contact our team at any of the contact information addresses below. You can contact myself, Signe, Marita, or Brigitte Zhao as well. And we're all monitoring our inboxes and keeping an eye out for any questions that you have. We know that often these proposals are very nuanced, and we want you to put together the best process or best proposal as possible, and to help you yeah, help you put it together. So we want to provide as much support as we can to make sure that your idea is as clearly articulated to the jury as possible.
Awesome. And just to address a question in the chat here, um, asking in case it was missed in the chat, is the expectation that we apply for travel grants before or after being confirmed to showcase a Nocturne? That's a great question.
That is a great question. Yeah, and don't apply until you are confirmed. Once you are confirmed participating as a Nocturne artist, we'll be able to provide a letter of confirmation that you can include with your submission. We often have many artists who apply to Canada Council for our travel funding. Yeah, and so we do provide a letter. We can't guarantee that it'll be successful. I do find maybe half of the travel grants are successful. I don't know the rhyme or reason why some are and some aren't. But yeah, we are able to provide a letter if you are successful. Um,
Um, and I know it's hard to it's kind of hard to, you know, to know if you will be successful when it comes to grants. So I know budgets can change, and that's something that happens. But yeah, we've had a lot of folks from other provinces apply after being accepted and get the grant. So yeah,
I-
I hope that,
And on that note, I would like put the full amount in there and just say that you are applying for travel funding, but it's not confirmed. Like, we aren't going to leave you hanging if you apply for travel funding and you don't get it.
yeah,
So don't
that's
make that a barrier for applying. We recognize and we don't want people to be picking up the cost of travel either. So, um, yeah, oftentimes people will not put in that they're applying for travel funding, but they'll apply afterwards, and then let us know if they do get the travel funding, and then we adjust afterwards.
yeah. We also had a question again about Carfax fees, just about um, what is the Carfax rate for this short duration exhibition? Because the Carfax rate is also based on the duration of the exhibition. Um,
Hmm.
so, and then Raha said, uh, if the project with travel costs is $3,000, for example, Carfax will pay us around $1,000 for an artist fee. Um, so I believe it is like it's a sliding scale, but if your project is under 5,000, the minimum artist fee would be 35% of your overall budget. That's what the new guidelines say.
And
So I'll just
that's
send the
the
link as well.
and that's what we put in our formula is we use 35%.
Yeah, so that's
So
that's correct, Raha. Does that answer your question? Yeah, and
Yes,
if you do
thank
have
you.
follow-up questions around this, feel free to reach out to us, as Melanie said.
Yeah.
I know it can be tough to navigate, even if you are a seasoned artist, like it is always changing. Yeah, and
So,
then, oh,
yeah,
sorry.
thank you so much. Yeah. So we should pay, for example, for this example, we should pay 2,000 from our pocket, or we should have a grant.
Oh, so no, if you look at the budget template that we have when you're applying, there are different sections. So there's artist fee is kind of it's the payment that goes directly to you, not including your materials or anything. But you also should put your material budget, any labor that you're paying for, um, travel, etc., in your budget under those sections. So we pay not just for the artist fee, but we also pay for materials, etc. So the artist fee is could be considered you paying yourself, basically. Um, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
So the artist fee doesn't include materials. We also pay for materials in if the budget is successful.
Yeah, thank you. But for the travel, we should have a grant. We don't support the
We
cover the travel cost.
no,
so we
we do
do,
support travel.
but there are uh, so basically the travel grants are we encourage you to apply for those just as an additional source of funding, and then you can kind of reallocate um, you know, more funds to creating the artwork. I don't, yeah.
Um, yeah, no, but we do pay for travel. So we pay all expenses related to the creation and exhibition of this project. So if you need to travel um, to come to Halifax for this work, which you would need to come for this festival, that is a valid expense. So
Yeah.
I looking at the budget, I don't think travel is included as something that um, travel isn't included in the amount that is the 35% of the artist fee, but it is like so travel will count like 30, be tallied up in the amount of the that we use to figure out the artist fee from, but it is something that is covered. So if you look at the budget form, and maybe that's something I can bring up really quickly if folks would like me to go through the budget.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be helpful, I think.
okay. Okay, so let me just quickly go to find a link to the budget. Okay, right. So you have the budget here, um, and you can check out the 2025 Parfac public fee schedule. We've got links to it throughout that you can check out. Um, Now, if I'm going through this, I would need to, okay, I'm not going to make a copy right now. But if you go through, you're going to put amounts in for your materials, your equipment, your travel. Okay, travel is included there on that line. Any professional services, any honorariums, accessibility costs, other expenses you're going to put in. You're also going to put any notes of how you come to that. So you say, oh, this is Carfax fee. This is an hourly wage for honorariums for other expenses or professional services, what other your other expenses are. Then we also have, and then it'll calculate what the artist fee is. So this is something that'll be calculated for you. We also have an artist fee that we've put in for promotion of your project. We'll ask you to provide something that we can use for promotional purposes. And then as well, if you're interested in doing an artist talk or a workshop, this isn't guaranteed. We don't figure these out until later on in the process, but if people are interested, we do put that in as well. Um, and then it calculates it all. And then we ask for your revenue sources to make sure that it's all covered. And then at the end, the amounts need to balance.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions from folks? I know we're
There
right
are
at,
some other questions here.
yeah.
Yeah. So someone did bring up a good point, a good question about child care or parental support. So if you are a parent, if you have young children, please do put childcare or other supports in your budget. I think that would go under artist care and support. Um, so that could include like the time needed to create or install the work, as well as like maybe the night of the festival. I think, yeah.
Mhm.
And we have another question here. Do you have projectors available? We do not have any equipment or projectors, anything like that, available. So that would be something to definitely put in your budget. Kind of if you're wondering how much a rental costs for a projector, we just encourage you to go check out a few different websites. I think one of the websites that one of the rental companies here, I can't remember the name of it.
So we do locally have CFAT, the Center for Art Tapes, is a nonprofit organization that does rent out different hardware, and we've worked with them lots in the past. I would recommend if you do have special things, reaching out to them. You can also reach out to advanced systems. They often have stuff. So yeah, there's lots of different companies in town. And if you're working on your proposal and you know you'll need, you know, a certain type of projector, or we can definitely recommend places that you can reach out to. I did see a question that came up around accommodation costs. Yes, and we have a link in there. We use the Canada Council guidelines. So I think we have a $75 per diem. If you're here and you need to install for a week, it would be $75 a day that you're here. And then we also use the the Canada Council travel rates as well. So they have a little calculator on their page there that is also linked to in our budget template. So if you're traveling from Saskatoon to Halifax, it'll um, give you a number just based on the number of kilometers that you've had to travel. And those are the numbers that you should include.
Um, okay. And then I also had a question here. So someone is asking in their proposal, okay, so if you have an idea about a large scale project or like a project in multiple zones, um, something that's maybe a really large budget, and if it's decided that it's too large, could you include like a contingency plan for an alternative downsized version of the project? I think that's what Shane's asking here.
So I'm actually going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you something on our FAQs, just that kind of gives you a sense of the scope of the projects that we've had in the past. So, um, sorry. So, we've got a few tabs going on. So, Um, Is there a set budget? So we generally would have a graph on here. And I wasn't able to see it. So maybe that's something that you might be able to look up.
Yeah, let's see here.
And I might get you to share it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up. I will look on the other call here and I will fix that. Hmm.
So I'm looking at
Oh,
the
okay.
other
So there's a
call.
link for it.
Okay.
Yeah, we replaced it with a link to Canva. So I'll just send that in the chat here.
Okay. Is it in the
Yeah, so it's in the FAQs under yeah, and then go down and it should be oh,
budget template?
this
This graph.
graph.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Sorry. Um, and we'll make sure that's a bit more visible. But if you look at this, you can see the projects in each year and what they were funded for. So kind of, we don't have a set amount for projects. Um, we want you to budget your project for what it's worth. We're hesitant to say projects up to 5,000 or projects up to a certain amount because we find that people either like skew their budgets up or skew them down. And we want you to actually be realistic for what the cost is for you to do it. But looking back, this is how projects have been funded and what the costs have generally been. And so this might help you figure out what proposal. So if you're like bigger, the project that's a bigger scope is like a $10,000 or $20,000 project. It's, something that's larger like that. Like when we have a set budget, what we need to do then is say, okay, is a project that big going to be worth not funding maybe these three or four other projects? And sometimes they are. So we don't want to say no, don't do it. We'd never fund something that expensive, but we want you to be thoughtful around it.
I also have a question. So someone is asking, is there a preference for interactive versus sculptural work or like interactive performance work versus a static installation? Um, so no, there's no preference. We have all kinds of work. We have performances, we have installations, we have interactive work. And some of them are all three. Some of them are a combination of different things happening. The only thing we do require is that you somehow incorporate the theme into your work or kind of relate the work to your theme, and that it runs from 6 p.m. to midnight. Performances, sometimes people will kind of have breaks in between performances. I know that's a very long night for people. Um, but yeah, more or less between 6 and midnight, um, and publicly accessible. The second part of their question was during the festival, our staff/volunteers at each site for safety and supervision. Great question. We do have volunteers. We generally have around 100 volunteers for the festival for the night of. Um, most projects, uh, so the Beacon, Anchor, Spotlight projects, will generally have a volunteer or more than one, on site. We do not require volunteers to kind of be the sole supervisors of the work. So if it's something that you're worried about someone touching, or if there's really technical elements or really expensive equipment, that's not something that we generally ask our volunteers to have like full responsibility for. But yes, they're there to help with wayfinding, with helping out with um, the needs of your project, installation, deinstallation, and we do have a volunteer coordinator that starts in the summertime, um, and they will help you coordinate, yeah, your needs, volunteer needs, and everything like that.
And I'll just add on
A
to
lot of
that.
projects. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I just want to add on to that. Yeah, we do a call once your project's successful. We do a call for we ask you to confirm the volunteer needs, and it's sometimes you won't don't know that information until a bit closer. I know when I did my project, I think I needed 6 or 7 volunteers throughout the night at any given time, and so if those are the needs that you'll have, make sure you let us know as well. We set those uh, out later on, so you don't necessarily need to put that you'll need an army of volunteers at that time. Um, but
Yeah, and one good
yeah,
example, so in terms of safety, like volunteers aren't security and we don't have security. Um, However, we did have a project, for example, that had a very, very large, expensive projector that had to be meticulously set up the night before. Um, and the artist was very concerned about leaving it overnight. So they had to use some of the funds from their budget to hire like an overnight security guard, and that's not something that happens often. Um, but it was one of those circumstances that
mhm.
yeah, and that's something if you know in advance that you're going to need something like that, um, you can consider putting that in your budget.
Any other questions?
Um, oh, I thought I saw a question pop up here. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the question is about whether a project can be indoors. And yes, we have projects both outside and inside. Um, yeah, when we're looking for venues, we try and find an appropriate venue for the project. We understand that not all projects are appropriate for outside, depending on yeah, the equipment and other needs. So indoor projects are definitely an option. Um,
I do want to add to that though too. Just like there is a lot of people who come to Nocturne. Like last year we had 65,000 people.
mhm.
Sometimes you need to think about impact when you think about, okay, this project needs to happen indoors and it needs to be in a small space where only 10 people can see it at once. That might be a smaller impact in terms of the number of people who are able to experience the work. So like questions like that do come up. Um, and we have had projects like that before. So that's not a deal breaker by any means, but those are things to think about is just that we do have a lot of people. One of the things that I think where there's a lot of magic with Nocturne is that you can have you like projects in parking garages, parking projects in back alleys, that the locations can be experimental as well. And it really is about connecting with the space and the city, and especially this year with the theme of ground. The theme is ground. So, how was your space project that's going to be inside connecting and resonating with that theme?
Yeah, so site specificity is always something to think about. You don't necessarily have to have a specific venue in mind, but if you have um, kind of like the parameters around what kind of venue or space you need, definitely think about that. Public art is very much intertwined with the space that it's in rather than art being shown in a gallery space. So it's a chance to kind of do something new in a space that you wouldn't normally be able to show art. Yeah. And if there's any other questions I missed, I'm sorry if I missed any that or maybe in the reply threads. Oh, we got. Thank you for all the info. You're very welcome. Thank you for coming. Um, mhm. And if there are no more questions, but if a question comes to mind later, Melanie, do you want to go back to the contact slide quickly?
Yes.
We've got our email addresses right there. They're also on the website, nocturnehalifax.ca. Under info, you can find our team members there. And just to reiterate, we will be sending the recording of this presentation. We'll send a link to the PowerPoint itself as well. So you can go through that and any other important links or info. We will send you a little package. Just give us a day or two to upload the video, and yeah, we will get that to you. Um, we just have one last question here. So, is there a priority on Halifax artists, or are there equal chances for artists from other provinces?
That's a great question. And for that, I'm just going to go back to the scoring matrix because where that's going to show up is in relevance to place or community. And is the artist local? This being said, I'm going to say about 20% of projects annually are from artists who are not local to Halifax. So last year, we've had artists from a few artists from British Columbia. We had artists from Saskatoon, Winnipeg, other parts of Atlantic Canada, Toronto. So yeah, we do accept submissions from all over. We didn't have any international artists this year, or sorry, in 2024, but we have in previous years. So um, it is relevance to placing community considers that in the scoring matrix. But yeah, we still encourage you to apply.
How many projects typically at the event? We last year had uh, just over, I want to say 90,
That was for the whole festival, but I think the night of Nocturne, we had about 70 projects.
78, yeah, 70 to 80, I think.
Yeah.
In community groups alone, we had around 50 projects.
Mhm.
Yeah, so and that's not all Beacon projects, like I said. So they're all from different project categories, but those are all on the Saturday night.
For the Beacon projects, we'll probably have between 10 to 15. We've had as many as 20 before, but it really depends on the projects that are selected. It depends on the budget that we have available. So it's kind of tricky for us to tell. So I'd probably say, yeah, between 10 and 20 projects will be selected.
Um, are you interested in performance projects that incorporate visual elements, or is it focused on visual, like visual only? Yes, yes to all, I guess I would say. So, um, performance is not, it's not limited to performance. I hope I didn't mislead anyone by saying that. So we have projects that are just a setup, an installation that's set up for the night. Um, it may be interactive, meaning people can engage with it or through different sensory ways, or it can simply be, yeah, a static visual installation of some sort. Yeah.
Just just to add to that, if you do have something that has a few different elements, be sure to be clear in your proposal. So, for instance, if you're like, there will be a projection and then there will be a 10-minute performance every hour on the hour, or you will be performing the entire time, or there will, So let us know kind of the cadence of what the night would look like. Will the performance be going on? Will someone be doing a durational performance for the whole 6 hours? Or, you know, so the more details, especially with performances, because it would be a long night for performances, the more detail you can provide. Um, yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Well, I think if that's it, I would once again like to thank everyone for coming today. And if you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out to any member of the Nocturne team, and we will help you answer your question. We want everyone to put it together the best proposal that you can. We recognize it can be a tricky thing sometimes to navigate, but we're here to support that process. So when we give everything to the jury, they're just blown away by everything. And yeah, once again, thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you at this year's Nocturne.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was great to hear all your questions, and we're really excited to see all of your proposals. Awesome.
Right. I'm going to stop recording. Oh, stop sharing and